Hopefully this is okay to post here. My story is not one where I was the target of someone's stalking or harassment, but one where I was the guy who was at the right place at the right time. And I'm fairly certain that my inadvertent intervention may have saved someone I'd never met. Well, who knows what. This was back in 2015 or 16. I'm a career tow truck driver. At this point, I've been towing cars for most of my adult life, and will most likely do so until I retire or die, whichever comes first. At the time, I was working for a pretty small towing company with only 2 employees. We rotated who was on call each weekend. It was my weekend on call. It was summer, so with people being out and about late and whatnot, I was pretty busy. Cleaning up accidents, towing broken cars down both in the city and off the highway. I was fine with it, as I was paid in commission at the time, so the more calls I did, the more money I made. It's Saturday night, now Sunday morning. It's around 2:30 to 3. Like I said, I've been busy. I'm tired, I'm a little grumpy, and I kind of want to go home when my phone rings. It's an insurance company calling asking if we could do a tow for one of their customers who's broken down on the side of the highway. The breakdown location they gave me is about 15 miles out of town, which I normally wouldn't do, but the tow destination happens to be a dealership that's a couple of minutes from my apartment. So I contemplate rejecting the call, but because I'm paid commission, I figure screw it. I can run up, grab this car, drop it off the corner from my place, then hopefully I can just head home and get a couple hours of shut-eye. So I take the call and hop onto the highway. The insurance company provided me with the customer's first name, which for privacy's sake we'll call her Kara, and then gave me a phone number for her. I usually try to make contact with the people who are on the side of the highway to let them know that I'm on my way, and give them an ETA. I tried calling her a couple of times, but she didn't answer. Not unusual. After a short while, I see hazard lights up on the way on the shoulder, so I turn on my strobes and start slowing down. As I approach, I notice that not only is there a late model car that I'm looking for, but there's another car on the scene as well that doesn't have its hazards on, but it's parked in front of the car I'm meant to tow. This is annoying but not uncommon, as I needed to be able to get in front of the disabled car in order to load it, and sometimes people don't realize that. But because the other car is there, I instead pull up behind both cars. Standing at the trunk of the late model car, which is now directly in front of me, are a man and a woman. The woman is probably in her early 20s, dressed to the nines for a night out. She's maybe 5'1" or 5'2". She's wearing tight leatherish or something pants, a halter top, long black hair, very pretty. The man is probably 5'10" and skinny, maybe 150 or 160 pounds, wearing a dark hoodie and dirty jeans. They're standing very close, facing each other. She has her arms crossed and he's leaning down talking to her. I step out of my truck and approach them both, and I introduce myself. They separate a few feet, and I look to the woman and say, "Are you Kara?" She nods. I say that I'm here from her insurance company. I ask what's going on with her car. Immediately, the man pipes up and says, "Yeah, it's just some fuel issues. It's an easy fix. Can you just drop it off at this commuter parking lot? I'm gonna fix it for her there." I'm rather annoyed at this, because the commuter lot in question is further up the highway, and I'm already 15 miles out of town. Like I said before, I only took this call because it was supposed to be coming back toward my apartment, and I really wanted to go home. Not only that, but in order to change the original tow destination, I would have to call the insurance company back, wait on hold for them for who knows how long for a representative, and then let them know of the change and try to get them to pay me extra for the deadhead miles back home after I unload. I really didn't want to do any of this. Thirdly, this is a late model car. I'm no mechanic, but it's new enough that whatever is wrong with it is likely covered under warranty, so the dealership is really the best place for it to go anyways. I explain all this to this guy, but he's not really having it. He gets stern with me, saying something like, "Look man, you just need to take the car where I tell you to take it." We go back and forth on this for maybe 60 seconds, and he's just getting madder and madder. "Well, you know what, man? You're not the name insured. Kara is. The easy way to settle this is to ask what she wants me to do with the car. Whatever she says is what I'll do. Fingers crossed she'll want to take it to the dealership so I can get home sooner." I turn to look at Kara to ask her that question, and I don't see her right away. She's no longer standing where she was a minute ago, which was slightly off to my right. I continued not to see her until I've turned almost all the way around, because she's standing directly behind me. And by directly, I mean within an inch of my back, arms still crossed. I look down at her, and she locks eyes with me. Her eyes are wide as plates, almost owl-like. Immediately, it feels like she's staring into my soul. She didn't have to say a word, and she didn't have to. I took a step back and did what I felt was like a double take. I looked at him, then at her, then at him again, then back at her. It slowly starts to dawn on me that maybe something isn't quite right. I ask her, "Do you know this guy?" And she ever so slightly shook her head no. The expression on her face when I asked her that will forever be burned into my skull. Turned to the guy and was like, "Oh, you gotta go, man." Now, I'm not a tough guy. I'm a total beta male, if there is such a thing, and I don't care who knows it. I've got nothing to prove. I'm super adverse to confrontation and will run at the first sight of trouble. I'm not exactly the biggest of guys either. I am, however, what I'd like to call sturdy. I'm 5'8" and 240 pounds and have a bit of a gut. But I also have big thighs and broad shoulders, and people are generally surprised to find out that I weigh as much as I do. And I think that might have been my saving grace for what happened next. Without a word, the guy starts to move for Kara, and I move to stay in between him. He tries to push me out of his way by shoving me in the chest, but because I believe he underestimated my weight, only pushed me hard enough to make me take a single step back. Immediately, I took that step forward toward him and body check him, hard. As hard as I could, hard enough to completely knock him over, basically onto his ass. Because we rotated during the back and forth push bit, Kara is now in front of me to my right, somewhat between me and the guy who's trying to scramble to his feet. I reached out and snatched up the poor girl by her waist, spun her toward my truck, and yelled for her to get into the driver's side, and she does so. I turn back to the guy, who's standing up again at this point, and he's breathing hard. He gets right up in my face but doesn't do anything, just breathes at me. I stare him right in the face, mustering up the best dad voice I can muster and just say, "You need to go." I'm shaking now, absolutely terrified. I don't know if he has a weapon. Don't know if he's going to try to fight me. I don't know what I would do if he did. Like I said before, I'm not a tough guy. I don't even know how to fight. I've never been in a fight in my life. What if I get badly hurt? What if I get stabbed? What do I even do now? I just want to go home. I wasn't even going to take this damn call. All this is running through my head at lightning speed. After probably around 15 seconds or so, which felt like eons, he huffs a bit, smiles one of the creepiest smiles I've ever seen, and starts to back up, sucking his teeth and rubbing his hands together. He slowly starts walking backward a few steps, then makes his way to the front of the car, gets in and drives off. I stayed motionless, watching him until I could no longer see his taillights. I got Kara's car loaded up onto the tow truck. As we made our way to the dealership, she told me through tears that her car had shut off while she was driving. She pulled over to the shoulder, called her parents because she was on their insurance. Her parents made the call to the insurance company, who eventually dispatched me to her location. While she was waiting, a bit after she made the call, the guy pulled up in front of her, walked up to her passenger side window, and tried to talk to her, ask if she needed help. She told him she was fine and that a tow truck was coming, and she didn't need any help. He persisted, and she tried to tell him off, eventually tried to roll up the window. Apparently, he stuck his arm in the window and got the door unlocked and opened up the door. In fear, she jumped out of the car and ran to the back of her car and stayed put there because it was in the line of sight of traffic. Apparently, he was pretty lewd with her. Whenever she tried to go back to her car, he would prevent her from getting inside. Several minutes later, I showed up. Who knows what would have happened had the timing been any different. Her parents were waiting at the dealership when we arrived. She told them what had just happened. Her parents gave me a $20 tip, which was all the cash they had on them at the time. And Kara gave me a very tight and clearly heartfelt hug before I left. I never saw her again. I tell you what, every guy has daydreamed at some point of coming to the rescue of a pretty girl in trouble, myself included. You think you're gonna be a hero, that you're gonna be the cat's ass. You're gonna slay the dragon and get the girl and ride off into the sunset, like the king you think you are. But for me, being in that situation, in the moment, was one of the most terrible feelings I've ever had in my entire life. Forced into a confrontation I didn't want, nor was I prepared for. Not knowing what to expect from a clearly not well-hinged individual. I didn't feel like the cat's ass. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a scared little kid encountering a bully on the playground for the first time. If I'm ever in a situation like that again, I will never not intervene. But I really just hope I don't have to. Thanks again for reading. A little backstory. When I was 19, I lived with my mom in a ranch-style house on a road that backed up to a large field. On the other side was the main highway. About a half a mile down from me was a loony farmer, and about a mile on the other side of me was pretty much a crack house. I guess someone used to live there, but it was run down. I will say that the crackheads were pretty quiet. Other than those two houses, we were pretty isolated. At the time, I was working full-time and going to school full-time. One of my classes ended at 10:30 p.m., and I often wouldn't get home that day of that week until about 11:15-ish. I was driving home one night and noticed some guy walking down the road. He had a yellow shirt and track pants. I remember his outfit because it was stupid. It wasn't weird to see people walking down my road because of the whole crack house thing, but I instinctively looked over at him when I drove past. He turned and smiled and waved, which freaked me the fuck out. So I speed half a mile home and pull into the driveway, weirded out. I made sure all the doors and windows were secure, then sat on the couch to be a paranoid freak and wait to make sure the dude walked past my house. Except he didn't. And there was another guy with him, dressed in darker clothes. They actually walked up my driveway and started playing around with my car, testing the handles and stuff. I was in a hurry and I forgot to grab my phone from my car, so I was kind of worried that that's what they were after, until the guy in yellow started to approach my door. I'm freaking out, and I go to wake up my mom. She's bleary, and I'm trying to explain the situation while we both hear the doorknob turn very slowly. She got out of bed, walked to the door, and then Yellow Shirt knocked. I perched up on the couch so I could get a good look at him and his friend, still in the driveway. The porch light was on now because of the sensor. "Yeah?" my mom said. "You dropped your wallet." I told my mom that I had my wallet. It was in my purse. So she calmly told him that she had her wallet. It was too late to be knocking on people's doors. I remember perfectly what he said next, even though this was about 6 years ago. "Okay, I'm not a bad guy, just so you know." We were all pretty still. No one moved. Not even the guy at the door. Not even when the porch light went off. Then he tried the handle again. My mom told me to call the cops so she could get the gun. I told her I didn't have my phone. So she walked into the kitchen and grabbed hers from the charger. She handed me the phone and walked to her bathroom, stared out the window into the backyard. Then she went back into her room to grab her Ruger. I was talking to the cops and explaining the whole situation, all while watching the two guys, explaining that there were two suspicious guys at our door, when my mom came back out and said, "One is in our backyard too," which explained why she had looked out the bathroom window. She glimpsed him from the kitchen and went to go get a more discreet look. My mom walked back over to the door with her gun and loudly said, "If he tries the handle again, I'm just gonna open up the door and shoot him." Fuck knows why she said that instead of waiting for the cops to arrive, but the guys took off down the road. I told her, and she rushed to the bathroom, where the guy apparently in the backyard saw his friends running down the road and sprinted off too. They were going in the direction of that crack house. The cops searched our house and our yard and went to the drug house, where they found 5 dudes hanging around. One was the yellow shirt guy, and I'm assuming his friends were with him. They did get arrested, and nothing weird like that ever happened again. But I was still on edge for a while. Still make sure the doors are locked at all times of every day, even though I live in a much nicer area now. Anyway, sorry it was a bit anticlimactic. The dudes got caught, Weird dudes who told me you found my wallet. It's not me. This occurred in 2009. I was 22 years old and was leaving my home state of California to head east for my corrections job. I was driving the loneliest highway portion of the route. It was around 3 a.m. on a Sunday. They don't call it the loneliest highway for nothing. I hadn't seen another soul for at least a half hour. I was getting sleepy, but I wasn't tired enough to pull over and take a nap. When I saw a broken down car on the side of the highway, I slowed and saw a woman standing next to her car. I approached this woman with caution, rolling down my window just a sliver. Something about her just wasn't right. I couldn't put my finger on it then, but I know now it was my subconscious screaming, "Red flag, red flag." I asked her if she needed me to call a tow truck or AAA for her, and she immediately tried to open up my door. I explained to her that I didn't feel comfortable letting her in, but I'd wait until a tow truck came. Immediately, she got this look of rage on her face and started berating me. "You're a big man, what am I going to do to you?" Saying I was cruel for not letting her in. This is where I fucked up. I can see this now 10 years later. I begrudgingly opened up my door, figuring she's right. She's at most 5'2", and I'm over 6 feet and have 100 pounds on her. She looked to be maybe 90 pounds. She slips in and I ask her who I can call. This was 10 years ago, so I had a little BlackBerry slide thing, I think at the time. She starts telling me that she just prefer if I give her a ride to the next town. Now, I'm immediately starting to realize that I messed up because she's avoiding eye contact. She's fumbling in her purse. And when I mention calling for help, she gets aggressive, demanding I take her to the next town. So busy trying to unfuck this situation, I miss a man who was either hiding in or near her car. It wasn't until he was almost to my driver's side door that I managed to catch him in my rearview mirror. Flight or fight kicked in. I put my car in drive and sped off right as that guy was reaching for my car door. I sped off and I hear a ping noise, and then my rearview mirror exploding. He was shooting at me. The adrenaline alone had me doing near 90, and by this time, homegirl realized in whatever drug-induced stupor she was that her little plan was futile. She started hitting me, telling me to stop and let her out. When I reached enough of a distance, I did just that. Pulled over and demanded that she get out. She started going for the oversized purse she had, but I'd had enough. I was literally shaking with adrenaline. Reached over, opened up the door, and pretty much shoved her out. I tried grabbing for her purse, but she managed to hold on to it before dumping half of what it was on my passenger seat. I sped off with my door still open. Waited till I got a good distance from her and slammed it shut and locked it. I clenched the wheel and drove, if on something autopilot. It wasn't until later that morning I pulled into a Denny's that I realized how close I was to pretty much dying. I had a good cry and realized a bunch of her things had spilled onto my passenger seat. Most of it was nasty, wadded up napkins, a few tubes of lipstick, and drug paraphernalia. I'd considered calling the cops or finding a highway patrol officer. I did do something stupid. I tossed all of her things that had fallen into a trash bag and threw them away. At the time, I had the dream of becoming a police officer, and I knew if I got caught with drug paraphernalia, that would be impossible. I didn't think they'd believe me if I told them that it wasn't mine. I noticed a cop at the gas station across from the Denny's I was at, and ended up telling him what had happened. He pretty much berated me for pulling over and letting her inside my car. He did say he'd look into it, but I doubt he ever did. I was so shaken, pretty much just picked at my pancakes and then left to continue on my way. I never did replace that mirror. I ended up selling the car as is where I lived. It didn't require me to have one, so... To this day, 10 years later, I still hesitate to stop and help stranded motorists. When I was younger, each summer and almost every New Year, my family would pack the car and go on a road trip to visit family in Mexico. We never had any problems until one particular trip when I was 8. Like every road trip before, we left our home in North Texas around 6 p.m. in order to reach our destination the following morning. So around 2 a.m., we crossed into Mexico. That's when things got weird. When you're on an only stretch of freeway in the middle of a desert, you don't tend to freak out about having the same car behind you for miles. It was practically pitch black on the outside of our car windows, the only visible shapes being the dotted stars and the eerie silhouettes of the cacti. We'd been in Mexico for an hour and a half, still had a few more hours to drive, and I remember sleeping but not being semi-conscious of what was around me, because I didn't have the skill to really fall asleep in a car. So when my mother suddenly spoke my dad's name, I heard her. Miguel, that car behind us, it's been behind us since we left Laredo. My dad peeked at the car and shrugged off my mom's tension. A lot of cars use this road. He's probably going to Reynosa or another city, and left it at that. Despite his sureness, my mom kept a weary eye on that car behind us. By this time, my siblings and I were hyper aware of the car, and entertained ourselves with watching it through the gaps in the luggage that blocked the rear window. We got tired pretty quickly. He's getting closer, my mother noted. We turned to watch as the car inched closer and closer to ours. He's too close, Miguel. She was right. By this time, the car was practically pressed against the rear of our car, on a lowly stretch of the highway in the middle of nowhere with another few hours until daylight. It was downright scary. We couldn't do much. My dad didn't slow down, didn't stop, and he didn't speed away either. He just drove. And that car followed. The next 30 minutes were the most tense we had ever experienced. The car would ease off sometimes, only to press its blinding headlights against our rear once more. Like he knew he was freaking us out, and enjoyed it. It was during one of the periods that the car had pulled away that my mom spotted a police car up ahead, parked on the side of the road. And she didn't miss a beat. "Pull over. Right in front of the police. Pull over right now, Miguel." And he did. And that car kept driving. I wonder how confused the policeman must have been as he watched my dad park our car right in front of him. The policeman came over and asked what was wrong. My mother urgently told him everything. The car, the way it followed us and taunted us. The policeman took her claims seriously and told us how people were victimized and had their car stolen on these empty highways by thugs and criminals. Then he offered to drive behind us for a while to make us feel safer. We drove off with that police cruiser behind us, relieved. Until about 10 minutes later, when we saw something that confirmed the policeman's words and my mother's worst fears. We saw that car pulled over, on the side of the road, waiting. Hey everybody, thanks for listening if you stuck around to this point. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button, the subscribe button, and that notification bell to be notified when future episodes come out. If you have a true scary story of your own, feel free to send it to my email or post it to my subreddit. You can stalk me on Twitter, you can stalk me on Facebook, and you can also stalk me on Instagram. All these links are below. Hey, what's going on, guys? First, I know I was supposed to do hotel horror stories, and I know it was supposed to be on Sunday, so I fucked up on two things already. Sunday had some shit come up, and the hotel horror stories, I have like 2 or 3 of them, but as I began to read over a couple of them again, they're just not that good. They're not really that scary, and I'm wanting to be better about not putting stories within this channel or on this channel that aren't actually scary, so, or at least unsettling. So I'm looking for more, so hopefully that will be the next episode or the following episode once I can get permission for some of these other stories that I found that are way better. So be on the lookout for that. I'm going to do a paranormal episode at some point too, and probably the next episode will just be a regular true scary stories. So yeah, that's it. That's all. If you're new here, I appreciate it. If you're still listening, one of my videos actually did really good a couple of days ago, that 2+ hours of deep wood stories. Probably the best of videos ever done on my channel. So I'm hoping that that is finally YouTube and the algorithm understanding my channel and figuring out where to push it and who to push it to. So fingers crossed, everybody, that I'm going to start seeing some significant uptick in subs and stuff like that. So hopefully all this hard work and all this shit and money and effort that I put into this channel pays out. I appreciate every single one of y'all for sticking with me and being here throughout this entire time, especially if you're still listening right now. And I will see you guys in the next one. Cheers.